Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today we're jumping into some malicious compliance. Before we start, if you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button. It's completely free and you can always change your mind later. But if you stick around, you may just learn how to deal with a sticky situation, be it at work or at school, like in our first story that comes to us from StarWorld8311. Oh, you're giving all of us a failing grade on our final project? We're going to talk with the dean of the department then. Let's jump right in. The background. My humanities classes were taught by 3 professors, team teaching, lectures, small groups, etc., and that worked out most of the time. However, our final project was a classroom simulated society, and they split the class in half to do this. They told us all that we had to stay in the rooms in a portable and couldn't leave. The rules for the project were that the students were split into upper class, middle class, and lower class groups, with each group having an irregular amount of tickets for travel, money, and food and drinks. The upper class got 10 tickets for almost every category. The middle class got 5, and the lower class got 2. Each of the 3 had to decide how to spend their tickets and could give them away if they chose. The upper class was the only one that had travel tickets, and the lower class was the only one that had entertainment tickets, TV time. In the first of the 2 sections of the group project, all the students stayed the whole 4 hours, and the project went about how you would expect it to go, with the upper class ruling the other 2 and taxing them in tickets. That section of the project was during the school day, between lunch and dinner. Our section was directly following them, so we couldn't go to the dining hall for dinner. We also couldn't bring outside food or drinks. I had to eat on a schedule for medical reasons, but was told that I would only be allowed to do so if I bought food or drink with our group's tickets. I was put into the upper class, so we had enough tickets for me to be able to do that, but then there were none for others to have anything. We, the 5 of us in the upper class, ended up splitting a can of pop and a small bag of chips. The people in our section of the project were mostly missionary kids. I'm not though, so we were mostly an idealistic bunch to begin with. All but one of the lower class group left the building to go eat dinner because they knew they weren't going to get fed otherwise. They weren't allowed back in and got failing grades because they didn't follow the rules for the project. The malicious compliance. The rest of us followed the rules to the letter but did it our own way within the confines of those rules. The tickets got spread around mostly evenly so everyone could travel, have at least one food or drink for their class to split, and have entertainment tickets. When it got to be hour 3 or 4, our class started singing, "Show Me the Way to Go Home." Then we started singing all the most annoying songs we could think of for the last hour. We absolutely drove the profs up a wall, but they couldn't tell us to leave because then they would have not followed the project rules either. We knew we were playing with fire with this one because the project counted for a good chunk of our final grade, but we didn't care after finding out that the profs weren't going to allow any exceptions to the rules, even for medical reasons. After we were done, we went to see if there was any way we could still get dinner, and the cafeteria stayed open for us a half hour after it was supposed to close, so we could eat. It was on a Friday night. The fallout. On Monday afternoon, we all came into the lecture hall, buzzing about the 2 extremes of the project. The people who ran off knew that they were going to fail, but the rest of us in both sections were sure we were going to get passing grades. We were all told that the first section, the one that imploded, would get passing grades, and the second section, the one that shared more equitably, would fail. One of my friends worked at the campus bookstore and knew that each stack of the project ticket and rule books came with a teacher's manual. Since these profs did this project for all their humanities classes at this level, they didn't get a new teacher's manual each year unless the project changed drastically. So the rest of the teacher's manuals were sitting in the back of the bookstore, locked up though. The friend told his boss what happened, and his boss gave him a teacher's manual. Those of us who had completed the failed section of the project had the professor's words on tape because we were allowed to record lectures. We took that and the manual and made an appointment as a group with the dean. The dean thought that the profs had been utterly ridiculous and we got passing grades for the project. The profs tried to argue that there was no way that the project could ever have had that outcome, but the dean didn't go along with that. His answer? You teach at a Christian university. and expect that your students aren't going to follow their beliefs? The profs had to change the syllabus, so the next year had the Simulated Society project removed and something else put in its place with better rules. Okay, so there's a couple of points that need to be made about this story. Number one, a medical exemption means you're exempt. These professors could have killed somebody with the attitude that they weren't going to let them eat, even though they have a medical exemption that means they have to eat. That is a bunch of bullcrap. Number two, this is a Christian university, and the group that adhered to the Christian principles are the ones that were deemed to have failed? I don't understand that one. So if somebody here wants to explain that to me in the comment section down below, I'd really appreciate it. Our next story today comes to us from Chaotic Ridiculous. Don't touch the tomatoes? Okay, there will be none. Let's jump right in. This happened to my mother recently. For context, the neighbor and her have driveways that are side by side with a small patch of dirty gravel and weeds between that is basically no man's land and is just there. It's about 1.5 feet wide, runs the length of the driveway, and no one really takes care of it, leaving it as a border. My mom also has plenty of tomatoes growing in the backyard, including cherry tomatoes that are a favorite of crows stealing them and other birds. Now, this spot was a favorite for birds to drop the tomatoes or pick them apart, because there were no dogs there while there were in the backyard or main yards, or at least that's how my mom tells it. Eventually the seeds sprout and there are small tomato plants starting to grow. Noticing them, my mom begins to water them regularly as she waters her front yard plants, as she has to walk by them with the hose anyway. This leads to cherry tomato plants sprouting and becoming incredibly fruitful between the driveways. After a while, they were disappearing, and my mom figured it was a combination of the birds and the wife of the neighbor's couple because she was home all day. My mom didn't care because these were just chance tomatoes. She had plenty in the backyard garden, and it was just nice to have something more than dirt and gravel between the driveways. All was dandy until my mom went to grab a few to snack on while working in the front yard, and the woman next door confronted her. She told my mother those were not her tomatoes and she needed to leave them alone. The neighbor woman continued that the patch of dirt and gravel was on her property, not my mother's, though our water meter was in it, and ultimately it was likely a 50-50 split if you even cared to look, which when it was just nothing, no one cared to. So rather than argue with her, my mom said it was fine and she would leave them alone. A few weeks later, they had started to dry up and die without the frequent watering from my mom, eventually ending in the dirt and gravel patch, becoming just that again. I love that the neighbor thought that the tomato plants were theirs and they didn't realize that somebody had to be watering those in order for them to be fruitful. Now, OP's mom stopping watering them once they had that confrontation might actually lead to another confrontation, because if the neighbor didn't realize that somebody was watering them to keep them going, well, the neighbor might think that OP's mom actually sprayed something on them to kill them at this point because they disappeared so quickly. One thing is definitely for sure, they should put up a fence down the middle line of those driveways because good fences make good neighbors. I think State Farm says it best, like a good neighbor, stay over there. Alright, our next story comes to us from Unorthodox474. I have to account for all my time? Okay, let's jump right in. So this one isn't for work, but school, and a dispute I had with an instructor who was looking for a way to shaft my GPA. I'd proven him wrong in front of witnesses, and he was looking for a payback. I was a student pew-pew smith at the Colorado School of Trades when this happened, and part of the last section of the program was working on a minimum number of customer-supplied pew-pews, kind of like how salon colleges offer discount hair services to real customers so that the students can get some experience. I had angered the instructor for that department by protesting when he dinged me a grade point for failing to document the size of the gas port on a pew-pew that didn't have one, a Benelli inertia-driven long pew-pew, and then proved in front of witnesses that he was wrong about how the pew-pew worked and forced him to change my grade. After that, he looked for every way he could to shaft me, and I could see his big play coming in the form of the school's very strict rules about how carefully we had to document how our time was spent, which would have allowed him to ding me for every unaccounted for minute, of which I was sure I had a few over the months. Enter malicious compliance. Early on in this section, it was called Design and Function, or DNF. I had been assigned an old Arasaka pew-pew to clean, and the screws were seized so thoroughly that I was afraid I'd strip them out if I wrenched on them too hard. So I'd applied penetrating oil and put it in my locker, then moved on to other pew-pews while I waited for the oil to work its magic. Once I realized what the instructor had planned for me, I simply forgot to get that pew-pew back out of my locker and left it in there for months while I worked on other pew-pews, letting it sit there until I was nearly finished with the section. Then, when I was near the end and the instructor started smirking and asking me about how well my time was accounted for, I produced this crusty beast from my locker, along with the timesheet for it, on which I'd accounted for every spare minute of my time in the section that wasn't on the other sheets, and claimed it was all spent on this thing, and told him I was sorry, but I just couldn't get the screws out, and I'd take an F on that one pew-pew out of the 35 I'd worked on as part of the curriculum. The look on his face as he read the paperwork and realized what I'd done was pretty priceless. I think he just about tore a hole in the final grade sheet, writing that my time was in perfect order, and he didn't say another word to me the whole time I remained in school. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, there's one from a user called It's Just Me 405. It says, I was a welding instructor until COVID closed the school I worked at. There was one student who told me I had a machine set up wrong. I told him it was right, he said it wasn't. I asked him to show me exactly what I had done wrong, so he did. I still told him I was right. Then he pulls out his phone, opens the provided ebook, and says, look, this is what's wrong. I had the polarity backwards, not gonna hurt the machine, but will affect the actual weld. Not only did I go back and check every single machine, but he got extra credit, and I let it be known that I had relearned I guess, something from a student, that I needed to slow down once in a while and not rush through the simple stuff. There are definitely teachers out there that just can't deal with being wrong, often characterized by them getting extremely upset when called out on something. To be honest though, I don't think I personally would have called out that professor in front of everybody else. I think I would have done it in private and give them a chance to learn from their mistake, especially if you don't know how that professor is going to take the news that they screwed up. There really aren't very many people out there like the commenter that we just read who can take that constructive criticism from a student and work with it and let everybody know that, yeah, sometimes I can be wrong. Our next story today comes to us from Humble Human Bob. Don't make that new order for the large Canadian. Let's jump right in. Yesterday, I was looking for something easy for dinner and phoned the nearest pizza from a small building. I ordered a large Canadian pizza for pickup, and the person on the phone confirmed the location and my phone before telling me I could pick it up in 30 minutes. At no point was price mentioned in this exchange. I had specifically ordered this because I was looking at the website and saw they had a large banner on their site which stated they had specific types of large pizzas for $16.99. On arrival at the red-roofed pizza from a small building location, I went inside to pick it up. That'll be $27.67. I'm sorry. I thought your website mentions this large pizza for $16.99. Sorry, we don't offer that price over the phone. It's online only. I was planning my compliance. I'm sorry, you're telling me that if I call in, my pizza is almost double the cost as ordering online? Sorry, the details are on the poster behind you, and you can see the small print in the corner says online only. The details were, as promised, in very small print on a very large poster. Throughout this, she had been holding the pizza out toward me, waiting for me to take it after paying. I admit I could have been a bit more polite, but I was a bit hangry and grumpy and just wanted to eat my pizza for the advertised price. I turned abruptly away and left her with the pizza. I walked back to the waiting area and pulled out my phone, placing an order online for the same pizza I had ordered over the phone. I refused to make eye contact, but watched her quizzically looking at me in my peripheral vision, all the while holding my pizza. She turned to put it down, but glanced at her computer, presumably seeing the notification for the same order, under the same name, with the same cell phone number. She looked from her screen to me, where I sat looking at my phone, watching her out of the corner of my eye. I'd like to think this was our pizza standoff, our duel of wits, our respective slices of stubbornness. After a few drawn-out seconds, she called me back up. Okay, you can pay for your pizza now. The total comes to $17.83. I paid the $17 in cash, and they handed me the same pizza they had been holding the whole time. The pepperoni on the pizza, icing on the cake, was hearing them call into the kitchen just before I walked out. Don't make that new order for the large Canadian. Okay, totally have to admit that when I read the title of this one, being a Canadian myself, I'm sitting back and kinda wondering why my body mass index would make a difference in this pizza shop that they didn't want to serve to the large Canadian. Now that I've read this story, as a true Canadian, I kinda feel like I need to apologize to OP for thinking that in the first place. So OP, sorry about that, eh? Our final story today comes to us from Ancient Educator 76. You're gonna need to repeat that back to me, double malicious compliance. Let's jump right in. Hey y'all, it's Drive-Thru OP again. I'll start off by saying this. If you ever feel petty enough to ruin a drive-thru person's day at work, ask them to repeat the order back. This isn't because it takes too long or it's difficult, so much as it is insulting to our intelligence. I still do it with a smile, mostly, but not this evening. When a car drives in the drive-thru, it sets the sensor off instantly, and we hear everything everyone in the car says. My headset beeps, I greet the customer, and I hear, "Oh, sweet, mellow yellow peach." I ask whether he wants a small, medium, or large. "No, butthead, not you. How about you pay attention?" Enter malicious compliance number 1. I'll pay attention alright. In the meantime, I tell him to let me know when he's ready. He orders in the most convoluted way possible, insulting me directly in between every other item. I even do him the favor of making his items a combo, because I've learned that, when in doubt, err towards nice. He then stops me as I'm about to say the total. "Look dude, you're gonna need to repeat that back to me. I know you messed that crap up." He had a very rude tone the whole way, which I'm learning to be better at picking up on in my twilight years, 46. Enter malicious compliance part 2, which unlocks part 1. Time to employ my memory and voice acting skills. You got it, sir. In my California surfer Keanu Reeves voice, "Dude, sweet, mellow yellow peach." I then go back to my voice for my parts. "Small, medium, or large?" "No, butthead, not you." "Well, let me know when you're ready." "Okay, man, I want a bacon burger, a big one." "Which burger, sir, we have?" "Look, dummy, a bacon burger." I keep going back and forth, switching between exaggerated and insulting California dude crush voice and my regular voice. Each of the 5 times he called me a name in the transcript, I make it in my voice, so it's me insulting him with his own words. My manager Bruce jumped behind the ice machine to laugh his butt off in full support of my churlishness. I repeated like 98% of the convo verbatim, right up to the request to repeat it back to me. He finally says, "You know what, goodbye, and go fork yourself." I say, "Have a nice evening," and wave to a man who was in the process of ruining his tires just to make a gesture with his hands toward me as he unsuccessfully passes the drive-thru window. I couldn't have planned it any better. He seriously popped his tire as he hopped the right curb. The best part? The 2 family nuggets he ordered, 50 nuggets for $11.99, didn't have to be made. Bruce was happier than any of us about this, as the cost to the company was so great. This guy disappeared into a flurry of yellow lights, clanking chains, and customers with carfuls of food, hopefully never to be heard from again. Wait a second, aren't the Twilight years 13 to 18? Oh, wrong Twilight, never mind. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, there's one from a user called Icy Silver Dragon. It says, "The problem is not repeating back the order, the problem was the guy's insults while ordering. I've had my order messed up before, so I always ask to repeat if there is no screen, but I'm always polite about it. Sometimes they miss when I say no whatever, usually something I'm allergic to. Never had them be mean about it because I'm not insulting them." Now, that completely leads to the fact that if you treat people with kindness, generally you'll get kindness back. But if you're gonna treat somebody like a butthole, well, you're probably the butthole yourself. Check out all 5 OPs linked in the description down below. I thank you for watching, I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.